Okay, Agentic AI. Is it fair to say that at the current time, at least, it's perhaps not delivering as expected from many organizations? Is that a reasonable assumption, or is that not true?
Well, I think, Phil, like all things in life, it's about expectations. And also it's about understanding the potential and how to unlock that potential. I think, there's been a lot of hype around agentic AI, and to be fair, it's the beginning of that kind of maturity curve. So not all that potential has been actualized. But I think it's important to maybe stay with the definition a little bit and really understand what agentic AI is, what it can do, and where it fits in the system, right? So Agentic AI, unlike many of the other technologies we've been excited about, over the last couple of years, from, automation to Gen AI and so on, agentic is different. It's different, and it's actually the clue is in the title. Agency, if you think about it, agentic AI, agency is about independent decisions and independent actions. So, we're looking at something that's completely different. We're looking at an element in the system that is autonomous, that can make decisions independently. Now that's really interesting, but the question really, and to your point around, are we getting the value from it? The question is, what is that action for? What is that system of action for? What does it do? What value does it deliver? And I think that's, for me, that is the real question. In a business environment, agentic AI is about value creation, but where does it fit? A technology on its own is just a tool. For me, the key in unlocking the value of agentic AI is to think about the workflow, right? Where does it fit? What does it do? What value does it create? What decisions does it make? And where does it fit in the system? What surrounds it? If you think about a system of intelligences and a system of actions, agentic AI is just a part of the puzzle, but you have to look at the bigger picture and you have to enable it to be successful.
Okay, so in terms of the sort of people's response or the thinking that it isn't delivering as they thought, is that down to the fact that they haven't sort of fully developed a sort of comprehensive AI strategy, which obviously includes agentic AI, and as you say, that's slightly different from sort of maybe previous iterations of AI, or have people just not started? I mean, is it just a lack of education, I suppose, is the question as to what it is and what it can do, so they're being disappointed because they think it can do things that it can't do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's the answer is it depends, right? So I see clients, and I think the maturity depends on the industry as well. So, if you look at telecoms, for example, who are more advanced in that area, the conversation really is around autonomy. And it's autonomy applied not at the individual or system level, it's autonomy that's applied at the company level. So, people in the telecom sector will be talking about autonomous operations. I mean, I came across a client a year ago who were looking at a transformation to a fully autonomous system. 5-year transformation. At the end of the transformation, the entire enterprise is 80% AI, 20% human. Right. Now, if you double click on that, the amount of change in the workflows, in the systems, and even in the skills of the humans involved is significant. It's not something that you can achieve overnight, but that's not for everybody. There are, if you look at banking, for example, there will be agents that are tried and tested, that have been working really well, that are delivering value around fraud detection, for example. So, if you go on holidays to Spain tomorrow, Phil, and your transaction gets declined, that's probably because some of the parameters triggered an agent that assumed there was a fraud going on with your card and blocked it. There might not even be a human in the loop at that point. So for compliance, for fraud detection, for customer service as well, there will be, for automation of payments. What's interesting about an agent as well is you can give it tools. And that's, again, a big difference with some of the other technologies. Not only is your agent capable of making a decision based on the parameters that you've given it, but it can also use tools. It can use the internet, it can make a booking on a website, it can process a payment, it can do things that a human can do, with a laptop and a credit card and a phone and so on. So an agent isn't just a bit of code in the system, it's actually a system that itself can make decisions and use tools. So the amplification, the halo effect around the agent is very impactful. And then that's just one agent, but you can also get teams of agents working together. Right, so agent to agent, and then you can get agents working with humans. You can get humans supervising agents. You can get agents to supervise other agents, and so on.
Okay, so how I mean, how do companies? Because as you say, I guess a lot of people will see it as another tool and just think, as you say, oh, we can do this instead of that or whatever. But I think, as I understood you correctly, you're saying you almost need to start with a blank piece of paper and back to sort of first principles, almost like, what's the business for? What are we were trying to achieve? And where can agentic AI fit in, rather than where can it replace humans as the starting point? Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, a lot of people read but have not played with it. So, I have a lot of clients who are, very smart, kind of very connected, really understand the strategic implications of what it can do, but they've not actually had an agent in their hands, if you see. So, for example, I build my own agents, and you don't need to be a tech person to build your own agents. I mean, in Wipro we've got our own AI platform, so I can do things that are more advanced. But I also have basic tools. It's low code, no code. You're talking in natural language, so you're speaking in English, and you're creating agents that have a personality, that have a character, that have a tool set, that know who you are, what you want, which environment you work in. I'm so much better at my job with agents. Does that mean agents are doing what I used to do? No. And that's what I was saying at the beginning. It's not just replacing bits of my workday and effectively delegating them. It's enabling me to do more and to do more interesting things.
And I mean, is there a difference between, I mean, what you've described there sounds as if you're using them internally, so they're sort of in your control, and if something goes wrong, they impact you. But clearly, agentic AIs also can be customer facing. So is it important to differentiate between, I'm not saying there are different standards, but at least to understand where agentic AI is sort of critical when it comes to customer interaction, as opposed to being used internally, where I say if there are problems, at least the impact may not be as great. Is that
Yeah,
sensible?
absolutely. I mean, look, as a consultant, my job is to know what the technology can do so I can apply it to solve it business problems. So, I work with companies all the time to reimagine their workflows, improve performance, reduce costs, and all of that. And the answer will be different in different industries and different processes across the enterprise. But fundamentally, that technology is changing so fast. If you don't use it yourself, if you don't experiment with it, if you don't look at the latest upgrades, if you don't try different combinations, you're not really able to bring kind of the right perspectives to your clients, right? So, I'll go deep in agents around, the future of the procurement function, for example, or we're seeing some great use cases in the HR function around, automation of a very large number of HR tasks with very, very small issues. I mean, this is tried and tested. In finance as well, we've got agents. But fundamentally, you need to know how an agent can be integrated with other things. I have a lot of clients who will come and say, we want to implement, agentic, and we also need to look at our data, for example. As you know, AI and data need to be looked at together. But sometimes they haven't thought about the other elements, because you can combine these technologies, right? So you can combine agents with automation, with outsourcing, with process reengineering. So if you want to take an enterprise into the future, we have a beauty and cosmetics client that really wants to challenge itself around what would our operating model of the future look like. Agentic AI is part of the operating model conversation. How does the data flow? Where are the humans in the system? What gets automated? What are agents doing? Are they internal? Are they customer facing? Are they making predictions on pricing? Are they helping you with your stock optimization? These are the questions we face every day. But there will always be a new change, a new technology, a new upgrade. That means a problem you couldn't solve yesterday can be solved today. So, from a business consulting perspective, it's really important to build a system that can be constantly upgraded. We often joke about, it's the journey, not the destination. I mean, innovation is continuous, and agents will keep on getting better, but agents are here and they're here to stay, that's for sure.
And although you said it's important not to just view them as, how can we replace a human? I guess it's still important, and maybe it's through the trialing of agentic AI, to understand where agentic AI brings value and where human sort of characteristics are still important to have within the organization. So is that something that folks need to spend a bit of time understanding as to, where the agentic AI plays and where, human, I don't know, creativity, for example, is perhaps something that agentic AI is not so, so easy to replicate. Is it, important just to make sure you sort of understand each process?
It's a great question, and it's not just thinking about it a little bit. It's a big question. Every transformation project, any client, any industry, right? The question around agentic and technology more generally always go hand in hand with a question around change management, around skills ecosystems, around culture, around hierarchies, around that there's so many human elements that cannot be separated from the technology conversation. But it's not a competition, right? It's not a competition for, there's a job and it's the agent versus the human. That's not what it is at all. You know, um, there is there is a place for the human in all of this, and I don't think it's going away at all. But there are different criteria which are emerging, and I think it's important to recognize them. Humans who refuse to, not refuse, but humans who don't work with AI, who don't learn prompting, who don't know, who don't experiment, who don't know what the technology can do, will find it harder to operate in this new environment, as opposed to a human who, I was joking with a client the other day, for some people, using AI is like cheating. They'll go, oh, well, I used AI for it, therefore I feel like, I cheated somehow. No, you know, AI is augmenting you. It is a tool that serves you, and you need to know how to use it well. At some point, it's going to be a colleague as well. It's just we should move away from the definition of. I mean, in the olden days of outsourcing and so on, you have this concept of the FTE, right? The full-time equivalent. So a person is an FTE. That's X number of hours worked per week with a certain skill set for a defined role. That concept is completely obsolete. It could be that an old FTE can now be done by an agent in 2 hours. The real question is, how far can you take your performance? How much can you enhance your business model? And there is so much for humans to do in that system. But my personal view is humans have been so bogged down with tasks that are frankly not that interesting. We haven't had the opportunity to explore what else we can do. And I think that's the beauty of it. So I think, the human plus agent kind of team is very powerful, but it requires an element of symbiosis. It requires an element of being able to work together. So there are three elements to that. One is understanding what the agent is for. So the workflow, what value does it create, what problem does it solve, and so on. The second one is around understanding the nature of the relationship between the agent and the human. And the third one is around enablement. So it's making sure that the agent can work with the human and the human knows how to work with the agent, and the processes enable that collaboration to be successful.
And in terms of how you enable employees to use it, I mean, I'm thinking there's a sort of shades of potentially shadow AI that you say to people, here's AI, go off and use it. How easy is it to sort of you don't want to stop their creativity, but obviously there need to be certain boundaries, I guess, as to what they're allowed to do without some kind of check or approval, particularly I guess around things like biases, and I think you mentioned ethical considerations. So how easy is it to give people the freedom but also some guardrails, if you like?
Well, again, it depends on the context. So let's take an example, right? So we recently implemented a big transformation piece for a client around employee experience. So working with the HR function to redefine the employee experience for all their employees globally. The agent is, so if you put yourself in the shoes of an employee in that company, the agent is basically something you interact with on your intranet. Right. And it's like a concierge service. It knows who you are, it knows your role, it knows where you're located. It's aware of HR obligations in your jurisdiction. It's aware of employment law. It's aware of all the ethical. So all of the ethical kind of frameworks would have been coded into that. So by default, the agent is like a perfectly trained HR professional. But it also has a customer service mindset, and it's also been programmed to help you. right, in real time. So you can combine it with a chatbot functionality, but you could say, for example, to your agent, I want to book 2 days annual leave next week. It knows how many days you have left to take. It takes you to the HR system. It asks you which days you want to book next week. You say, I want to book Tuesday and Wednesday next week. And it does that for you, right? So, from an employee experience perspective, you're not coding anything. You're just interacting with a service that did in 30 seconds what would have taken you 20 minutes in 3 different sites on your computer, right? So that's one example. So that's the experience view from an employee perspective. From an enterprise level, what they've done is they've completely streamlined the HR processes, and now you have a number of agents doing different things, all working off the same set of HR data. It's reducing costs. Have they remove the HR professionals from that equation? No. But the HR team can focus on training, they can focus on coaching, they can focus on organizational development, culture, and all the things that are actually quite enjoyable, from an HR standpoint, as opposed to booking people's holidays and working on compliance activities. So I think that's a good example of it's adding value at an enterprise level. From a user standpoint, there's no friction whatsoever. It's actually a good service. It works. It enhances your day. But the humans in the loop have not been removed. Now they have the opportunity, to your point, to be more creative and to add value. And I think that example can be replicated across so many industries, from logistics to banks to coaching, telecommunications, shopping. The possibilities are endless.
I guess another thing with a lot of new technologies, people sort of implement a project and then say, "Okay, we've done it, off you go." I guess with AI, I mean, the pace of its development, simply from ChatGPT days to where we are now, you're talking about agentic AI, and no doubt things to come. How important is it, and how, I suppose, easy is it for the company to help people to continuously learn about AI and to point out to people, once you've learned the basics, it's not like you sit there and go, "Okay, I know everything." How do you keep refreshing your knowledge, if you like, to make sure that you are continuing to use the latest iterations of the technology?
I think once you start, you can't go back. Once you start using AI and you see how incredibly powerful it is, I don't think people go back. I think they embrace it. I see it everywhere. But I think it's important to keep people stimulated with the potential, right? So we talked about combining agents with humans and with automation or outsourcing. What we haven't talked about is combining agents with other technologies. So, my definition early on was around autonomous systems that make decisions and have tools. But you can combine that autonomous system with vision, right? So we did a project last year in supply chain transformation, for example, where there were some issues with chemical fumes for an oil and gas production plant. So what we did was we put computer vision on a drone, and advanced pixel detection, all of that, with sensors, which would kind of analyze the smoke, take pictures of smoke, pixel level, so could analyze the chemical composition of the smoke, feed that data back in real time to head office. And in real time, they could also monitor the direction of the wind and so on. And then agents could take a decision as to, is it safe for civilians? Should we raise the alarm and so on? Now, once you've seen something like this, or you look at how agents can optimize, kind of production on across, manufacturing processes and things. Once you start getting into it, you can't unsee it. You start looking around you. You look at a process, you look at a company, you look at a department, and think, what could we improve here? How an agent could do that. Now, sometimes I catch myself looking at something and going, an agent could do that. Why has this not been kind of enhanced yet? But it takes time at the beginning, and like it's a transformation at the end of the day. This isn't about technology. This is about business transformation. Like any transformation, you need to be clear on your future state. You need to be clear on the change impact. There is a science behind it. The change management the science of change management that we've been applying for years in any digital transformation applies here. So training matters, leadership behaviors, communications, enablement, and making sure that people are able to share best practice, so the knowledge piece is very important. And like any change, you'll have your bell curve. So you'll have your 10% who are, early advanced kind of innovators who want to play with everything, who'll be your evangelists. And, there'll always be kind of, 5-10% at the end who need a bit of help with, embracing it. But I find it with agents, it's not that hard because, the user of the agent is not necessarily the person who designed it. So if you have a tool that makes your life easier, that's easy to work with, that's never sick, that never complains, that gets the job done at 100 times the speed of, what you, I mean, why would you not use it? So I think the business case is very clear.
And I'm also wondering, so in terms of the opportunity, there's clearly a lot of things that it can do instead of humans, as we've discussed, although it shouldn't be viewed merely as that. How easy is it to understand completely new, new things that I mean, the example you gave there of the drone, I don't know whether they were already doing something and this is a better way of doing it, or if that was something that thought, hey, we can actually use this to do something we've never been able to do before. So, if that is the case, do you need potentially to have a sort of AI coach or an outside person just to explain that opportunity? Because I say it's very easy just to say, okay, we can do this, with AI, agentic AI instead of human, but maybe not understand the completely new things that it enables. Do you think outside sort of help is useful in that respect?
I mean, some companies will do a lot of things in-house. My experience, and I'm biased here, obviously, working in consulting in a tech company. My experience is that sometimes people will need a little bit of help to ask the right questions up front and to create value. I don't believe that AI is the goal. So when I have a client coming to us and saying, I want to implement AI. The question is, what do you want to implement it for? And that's why I go back to workflow and agentic, workflow and AI, workflow and technology, because at the end of the day, there's a business problem that you want to solve, and there are different ways, different combinations to solve it. Just agentic AI, right? There is no one agent that companies will implement. There are thousands of agents. Hyperscalers have agents. AI companies have agents. We in Wipro we can build our own agents as well. Companies can build their own agents. Microsoft would have their own agents. Google would have their own agents. And so the question then becomes, which one? How does it all fit together? How do I pick the elements that make sense for my ecosystem, for my business, for my culture, for my objectives? And how do I bring all of these together in a way that is easy to manage, that can be scaled, that can be innovated in 3 months' time when there is a geopolitical shock or something else happens. Things change all the time. So for me, it's about the operating model, it's about the workflow, it's about the business value, and then it's creating a system that can evolve along with your enterprise, your customers, and the world around you.
Okay, so maybe even in sort of finishing, if you had sort of one or two pieces of advice to folks who are either sort of sat on the sidelines thinking we need to do something, what can we do, or maybe people who've had some early experiences and been disappointed. I mean, is it just get out there, sort of play with it, see what it can do, and then once you've understood that, start understanding how it can help your business? Yeah, just one or two bits of advice as to how to get the best out of agentic AI, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. What I would say is, experimenting is always good. What I like to say to clients when they're at the beginning of the journey is let's have not an innovation session, but a reimagination session. Before you jump to the solution, just stay with the question a little bit. There was a very interesting experiment after the Second World War where they were looking at performance improvement for planes, based on where the bullets had hit. And people were looking at the planes that had come back. Actually, it's the planes that didn't come back that give you the answer. And I think here it's the white space. If you're looking at making a decision that will transform your company, let's embrace the power of that transformation. Let's not just innovate 10% here with agentic, which you can do anyway. That's the easy bit. But the real prize is, can you reimagine your workflows, your processes, and stop doing some things, do other things differently, and then start doing things that you didn't do before. I see a lot of innovation in that space in supply chain at the moment where people are completely reimagining the possible because there are bits of the supply chain that are now digitized, which weren't digitized before. And combining that with agents means that, things that have been a headache for professionals in the supply chain space for decades can now be instantly resolved. So what I would say is stay with the question, experiment, you know, get outside perspectives, and also think outside of your industry. I mentioned the fact that, in telco, for example, at the moment, people are talking autonomous operations versus in customer, where we're looking at, different ways to kind of to keep engage and retain customers in ever moving ecosystems. But there will be some lessons for telco that can be applied in customer. There will be some lessons from banking that can be applied in logistics. And so having someone come and share those ideas, those use cases, but not getting sidetracked, not missing the wood for the tree. The point of this is not implementing agentic. The point of this is innovation, performance improvement, and business value.
Okay, I mean, it's been great to chat and you shared some brilliant insights into it because I'm sure many, many folks are, wanting to understand what it can do for them and how to implement. So, Caroline, thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
My pleasure, Phil. Thanks.